Welcome back to Screen View Mirror. I'm your host Emma, and you're listening to Screen View Thoughts. On this episode, I'm doing yet another Q&A session. Well, yet another one. I think this is the second or third one I've done. And this is going to be basically a list of questions that's been piling up since the middle of last year. It's not a long list, but it is an interesting list of questions. So without further ado, the first question is, how do you define guilty pleasures, and do you have any examples? So obviously, in what concerns the cinema realm and industry, that's a very interesting question because it begs the question, guilty to or for whom, right? Because in this instance, the opposite of a guilty pleasure is a proud pleasure. So let's say I watched 2001: A Space Odyssey. I don't dislike it, but it's not my favorite movie ever. But then because of the pressure, the outside pressure from, let's say, the cinephile community, I tell myself, okay, I'm going to force myself to really like this movie and be proud of that. Well, a guilty pleasure is kind of the inverse of that. And what these two scenarios have in common is the guilt or the pride of consuming XYZ entertainment is based off of a definition, an opinion, evaluation that is not your own. And of course, I know when answering questions such as these, we tend to take this lightheartedly, and that's totally normal. That's, I think, how we should take it, especially when it comes to creativity and entertainment. But you know, if you really ask yourself, well, what is a guilty pleasure, as the person who asked me this question has done, at the end of the day, it's just opinion, right? And if long story short, if you like The Kissing Booth 3 and everyone else kind of shames you into admitting that this is a guilty pleasure, well, it's ultimately down to you to decide just how much guilt you'll have to bear when watching that movie. Terrible movie, by the way. I haven't even seen it, but I'm just saying that it's a terrible movie. But you see, that's the thing with entertainment and creativity, and when you're at a kind of crossroads of individual preferences versus the others with a capital O expectations, it is sometimes difficult to navigate that wave. But anyway, hopefully most of us just take these things very lightheartedly. And guilty pleasures, they don't really matter. Just enjoy what you enjoy watching, and that's life. All right, next question. The best 2021 films you've seen, or just movies you've seen last year. All right, so last year I watched a lot of movies. I'm very glad that I had the time to do that. But the ones that stood out for me, and those are mainly ones that I've done podcast episodes on. So I think in the beginning of the year, I watched La Haine, which was incredible. I did a podcast episode on that with Patrick. And it was just such a good movie. I'm not going to get into details because I've already done an episode on this, but the cinematography, the acting, the message, it's a really satisfying movie to watch. And when I say satisfying, I don't mean it's like a feel-good movie. I mean it's very complete, I think. So that's that. That's one of the first movies I saw last year. Then, Mishima, another podcast episode that I also did with Patrick. Such a good film. I think my favorite aspect of that film was the cinematography and the colors and the way the story was told, but it was just a great movie to watch. I mean, you can watch it on mute. It's just so beautiful to look at. Then, of course, we had Bo Burnham's Inside, which I think was more or less the only 2021 film that I saw in 2021. All the other ones preceded 2021, but it was a great film. I really liked the not the structure. How can I put it? the way the components kind of played into one another. So like the musical aspect of it, and I'm not even a fan of musicals, but I think it worked well with this film, which also felt kind of more like a very high quality YouTube video, also given the fact that he basically did it all on his own. So yeah, I really liked how the components and the method of that film worked quite nicely. Then I watched I watched House of Gucci a few weeks ago. So that's another 2021 film that I watched. So the thing about House of Gucci, it was a good movie. I feel like people gave it more hate than necessary, I guess. The one thing that I didn't like about it were the accents. I thought that was kind of unnecessary. I mean, either you just get an all-Italian cast and you put English subtitles, or you make them speak English without pseudo-Italian accents. It sounded a bit weird. I mean, at one point it felt like Lady Gaga was speaking English in a Russian accent or something, but I don't know. I really thought that was unnecessary and distracting. But other than that, I mean, the acting was good. The costumes were great. It was a nice storyline. Then I know there were some comments on Lady Gaga's acting toward the end of the movie. Like, people were saying that she was taking her role a bit too seriously or overacting. Honestly, I don't think so. I think it really worked well with her character. But overall, and Paolo, oh man, what a great character. I think they really hit the nail on the head with Jared Leto's character, where he wasn't taking himself too seriously, but he wasn't also so much of a caricature for us to completely laugh at him. I mean, it was a very nice balance, I think. So yeah, that was a great movie. Probably not one of the best per se of 2021, but one that stood out mainly because most people gave it hate, and I really thought it didn't deserve the hate, or well, the disapproval and the criticism that it received, at least from the opinions and critiques that I heard and read. Then what else did I watch last year? Oh, okay. Yes, I watched There Will Be Blood, and let me just tell you something about that movie. I will have to either do a video essay on it or a podcast episode, but oh, wow. The acting in that film, I really just, I don't think I've ever seen such brilliant acting. I mean, the acting in that film is out of this world. Let alone, just forget the storyline for a second, forget everything, forget the cinematography, the editing, the score. Just the acting itself is worth so much. I mean, really, oh, what a brilliant movie. I love Paul Thomas Anderson. I think the more I interact with his films, the more I really love that this director. Also, this year I saw Licorice Pizza twice in the same week, and it was a great movie. Probably another podcast episode idea for later, but yeah, that's definitely one of the best films that I've seen last year. And then Harakiri is one that I'm going to be doing a video essay on that very shortly. Incredible storytelling. I mean, the way the story unfolds in Harakiri is perfect. It's perfect because, the way the story is told is part of the point of the story. So when you have that kind of reinforcement between method and content, that is, I think, saying a lot about a film. So yeah, those were the best movies that I saw last year, most of which were not even from last year, not released last year, but hey, that's life. All right, next question. Future movies you want to do videos on. Okay, so I was thinking Clockwork Orange, and I had an idea to do something on Blade Runner, and then I just stopped myself because I used to have a whole list of movies that I wanted to do video essays on and what kind of topics I could talk about when doing those video essays for those movies. But then I just scrapped that list and I told myself, okay, I enjoy making these videos, but I want to take a slightly different direction now. See, that's tricky because it assumes that I had a specific direction to begin with, and now I'm turning left or right and doing something different. But after the Harakiri video essay, which, as I'm speaking now, it should probably be done by next week, I think I want to do something else with this channel. I still want to do video essays and whatnot, but I do want to do different takes, if that makes sense, because I think that these video essays of me kind of taking a film and examining a character or a storyline or a certain cinematic aspect of it, that's fun, that's fine, that's great, but I think more could be done with the idea of screen view mirror, and I'm still figuring out what that is. Don't get me wrong, it's not like I have anything planned per se, so as I'm figuring that out, I will most likely be continuing with the video essays as they are now, but I do want to take it into a different direction because I don't want the channel to kind of lie flat and be all monotonous. So yeah, maybe I'll start making video essays on specific themes that we see throughout films. So instead of focusing on the movie, you focus on a theme and then explore how that theme has been portrayed throughout different films, or doing kind of like focuses on specific directors and kind of going over their filmography. So there's so much that I think you can do with a YouTube channel which focuses on cinema and which tries to sort of analyze movies and stuff. And yeah, that's kind of that's just a brainstorming idea. I have absolutely no idea what I'm going to do next or how it will work, but I'm thinking about it. So that's that. All right. So, thoughts on the rise of streaming services and the demise of theaters. Oh yeah, I remember I got that question when I did a question request back in November of 2020. So this was, so this stretches way back in time. But yeah, so someone asked my opinion on the rise of streaming services and then the kind of decline, I guess, if you will, of movie theaters. And then given the context in which this question was asked, because now more and more people are getting back into theaters, but in November 2020, that was not the case. And, okay, let's make this question about streaming services. So with streaming services, you're trading the experience, the ritual of, right, what Fellini called, going into this dark room collectively with other people and sitting down in front of a screen and kind of not knowing what's about to happen and engaging in a ritual, in an experience, almost like going into a church, like you're going into a movie theater with other people and enjoying an experience. So you're trading this kind of ritualistic experience for accessibility and for convenience. So that's the trade-off I think that streaming services give. And it's not necessarily a bad thing because it does increase, in my opinion, people's access to cinema, which itself is a good idea. But then at the end of the day, the medium is the message. And there's a difference between watching The Kissing Booth 3 on a 12-inch screen with your phone in your hand and, barely paying attention versus going to a cinema with other people and enjoying a movie on a bigger screen. And, there are so many movies out there that are destined for the big screen that the experience of watching them isn't even the same. So, yeah, you have to be careful with that, but overall, I'd say it's not a bad thing that streaming services are making movies more and more available and accessible to more people. So that's just my thoughts on that. All right, your favorite movie to watch during the holidays? Probably Goodfellas. I don't have a holiday movie, but I have a go-to feel-good movie, and it's probably Goodfellas. And that's the weirdest feel-good movie to have, I think. But I think it's just because I've watched it so many times that I just know it by heart, and it makes me feel at home whenever I rewatch it, kind of really just knowing every single character inside out and every scene. I think that's part of what I love about the movie. Aside from the movie itself, I love how much I love the movie. So, yeah, a go-to feel-good movie, Goodfellas. Why not? Next question. One movie you'd watch for the rest of your life? Probably also Goodfellas. And it feels like I've already been doing that. Because, I don't know, I watched it 18 times already? I lost count, honestly. But it's undoubtedly the movie that I have watched the most amount of times, and I don't even know why. It's not like crime dramas are my favorite genre per se, so I don't know what it is about the movie, but it's one movie that if you told me I could never watch cinema or I could never watch any films ever again in my entire life, except for Goodfellas, I'd be devastated, but I'd be like, okay, at least you're giving me Goodfellas, right? So that's how much I like that movie. Next question. Directors you find pretentious. Okay, well, you see, I'm nobody to say what pretentious is. And as a word that is abhorrently overused in Filmstagram and in, I think, entertainment / creativity / art circles. What is pretentious? I don't know what pretentious is. You tell me what pretentious is, because I don't know what that is. But what I can do is give you a list of directors that I just don't like for one reason or another. Let's start with Wes Anderson. That's an unpopular one. Everyone kind of loves Wes Anderson, and I just never got into it. I don't like his aesthetic. Everything looks too perfect in his films, and I think it's too kind of pastel picture perfect, ideal. It's not chaotic, right? It's not rough. It's not real. It's just, here's a pastel yellow colored circle, Moonrise Kingdom, or even like in Moonrise Kingdom, the scene where it was raining and there was like a thunderstorm. I feel like the raindrops were dropping just systematically, perfectly, so as to not disturb the composure or like the components of the screen. It made me feel like there was too much work put into it. And in general, with Wes Anderson movies, I feel like it's overworked, it's over-perfected to the point where I can't see it as real, if that makes sense. And by the way, I still haven't seen The French Dispatch, so maybe I'll change my mind, but I doubt it. But yeah, it's just the aesthetic that I don't like. Then calling him pretentious, I don't know what pretentious is. So that's down to, I guess, each individual to define what that is. But like, I just don't like Wes Anderson's aesthetic. That's pretty much it. Then, oh man, Nolan. So I went over this with the Interstellar podcast episode that I did with George, who's a fan of Nolan, but I really am not. I don't find his movies interesting. And again, that's a completely personal preference, but I don't like his movies. Interstellar was not interesting. Interstellar was a bad parody of 2001: A Space Odyssey. Interstellar was... If I hadn't had the podcast episode planned with George, I would have stopped watching that movie about half an hour in. Same, when I watched Inception, that was insanely boring for me. I didn't watch what was the last one? Tenet? I didn't even watch that one. And yeah, I mean, the only Nolan film that I liked was Memento. And even that, I don't know. There's just something about Nolan where it's like he tries to make his movies into like this time guessing game. And I don't want to play the game. That's it. Then, I can't even think off the top of my head other directors I'm not a fan of, because I tend to not watch that which I do not like. But yeah, I mean, Wes Anderson, Nolan, Lars von Trier. I'm just really not a fan of these directors, and that's pretty much it. So yeah, that answers that question. And then the last question for the podcast episode today: which movie do you wish you could see for the first time again? I mean, okay, something with a plot twist here would perfectly answer this question. But honestly, maybe it's because I'm working on the video essay right now, Harakiri. Because the way the story just unravels in that film, that really does it for me. And I think watching it for the first time gives you a different message than watching it for a second time. The message you get when you watch it for the first time is just so much more complete and holistic and impactful that I think Harakiri would be that movie that I wish I could experience for the first time again. It's certainly not going to be Shutter Island or The Sixth Sense. So that's that. All right. Well, thank you everyone for your questions. Very interesting questions. And you will hear from me next week, most likely with a video essay on Harakiri. But until then, keep watching movies, keep reflecting on cinema, and reflecting cinema to others. Thanks for listening. This was Screen View Thoughts.